Wait, I can't hear you anymore. You're all gone.
Okay, so I have to turn you down, Kari, because we
Yeah.
are going live. Okay, yeah. You'll be back when we start the game.
All right, Kari, can you hear us? Kari, can you hear us?
There's no delay. Go ahead and turn it up a little bit more. She should be able to hear us.
Yeah. Kari, are you with us?
It is like a seance.
Sorry. I mean, I have it on, stream has
Yep.
audio, so the audio is being sent.
Kari, can you hear us?
Did she mute
No.
already yet?
Go back to the tab. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
And last time.
You can hear him?
Can you hear us now?
No.
We just
You guys there?
We're here, but can you hear us?
There. We came through.
You can
I
hear
hear
us now?
Hey.
Good.
All right, thank you. All right, I'd like to call this a meeting of the Math and Science Academy Board of Directors to order at 6:02. Today is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Tonight we have a little different setup tonight as we have a member who is joining us virtually. So following protocol, she needs to be able to see all of us. We need to be able to see her. One minor difference with tonight's meeting is we will be taking votes via roll call. Instead of calling for aye, we'll do roll call. Any questions? All right. Abigail, will you read our mission, vision, and event acknowledgement?
Vision to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. Mission, we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science. And for land acknowledgement, we would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the land of the Oceti Shakui people, the people of the Seven Council Fires and the Wapikute Band. It is within MSA's responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about indigenous peoples and their history with this land. MSA works to build relationships with Native American students and families through academic pursuits and historical recognition.
Thank you. Roll call members, Wendell Sletton here, Isaac Leonardi.
Here.
Sarah Harms.
Here.
Tamara Brooks.
Here.
Jules Kinkle.
Here.
Brian Linsmeyer.
Here.
Kari Kerner.
Here.
Dan Ellingson.
Here.
Mary App.
Here.
And student rep Abigail. We did not receive any open forum requests, so we will skip past that. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I will motion, or I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion? Calling for discussion again. Hearing none, motion, or all in favor? Roll call, sorry, new habits. Wendell Sletton, aye. Isaac Leonardi,
Aye.
Sarah Harms,
Aye.
Tamara Brooks,
Aye.
Jules Kinkle,
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer,
Aye.
Kari Kerner,
Aye.
Dan Ellingson,
Aye.
Mary Yap.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any conflicts of interest in tonight's meeting? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Is there an motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion? Calling for discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to roll call. Wendell Sletton, aye. Isaac Leonardi,
Aye.
Sarah Harms,
Aye.
Tamara Brooks,
Aye.
Jules Kinkle,
Abstain as not present for meeting.
Brian Linsmeyer,
Aye.
Kari Kerner,
Aye.
Dan Ellingson,
Abstain also not present.
Mary App.
Aye.
Motion passes. The board would like to recognize for a couple of students for the College Board Awards. Dr. Hinton.
So the Board of Directors and Administration would like to recognize the following students for being awarded the College Board National Recognition Award. This award is given to students who score in the top 10% of the students in Minnesota in their award category, or have scored 3 or more on at least 2 advanced placement tests, maintain grade point averages of 3.3 or higher, and identify as one of the following groups: first generation college bound, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, or indigenous and attend a small town or rural school. Our African American awards this year were awarded to Neka Amadi, who is not here today, Priska Ofakaren, and Obed Bruce. Our first generation award goes to Amerigo Tesoro. Did I say that name right?
Amerigo Tesoro.
Okay, thank you. Amerigo, I apologize.
No, it's fine. It is not the first time I've heard that.
So we would like to recognize you if you want to come forward and shake hands, and then we'll have a picture.
If you'd like to start on that end, we'll go around the circle.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Great work.
Thanks. We're going to take a picture, so if you'd stay up here.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations.
If you guys want to come up and have a seat right here, we're going to take a picture this way.
Remember?
Oh, yes.
It's going to be kind of hard.
Neka's not here.
Getting close.
All right, congratulations.
Take one more for the parents.
Oh, one more. Oh, yeah, sorry.
All right, thanks.
No, you're
Oh,
fine.
no.
Nice.
This is good. It's an accomplishment.
Good thing to document, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tapping's too much for the microphone. Students, you're welcome to stay to the board for the board meeting. It's up to you.
You're welcome to say, but nobody's going to be offended.
All right.
Probably studying for tests.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
I move to pass the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I can second this, Dan.
Roll call. Wendell Sletton, aye. Isaac Leonardi.
Aye.
Sarah Harms.
Aye.
Tamara Brooks.
Aye.
Jules Kinkle.
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer.
Aye.
Kari Kerner.
Aye.
Dan Ellingson.
Aye.
Mary Yap.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. On to the board administration reports. First up is the student report.
First, I want to talk about MSA's published book, The Witches of Snowspell, was written by Verity Becker, a 7th grade student at MSA. The book is about 3 best friends named Melanie, Everlyn, and Sophia when they embark on a mystical adventure, and you can officially get this book on Amazon for $11.99. So that's really impressive, and it's really incredible that at such a young age, she was able to write and publish such a story, and it's really great that we are highlighting that in our school, and it just shows the excellence that we expect and have at MSA. With our winter sports, the season has started with boys basketball, girls basketball, Nordic skiing, and speech as well. In January, BSU will be hosting our winter formal, and the next couple of meetings, we're going to be crafting for it because the theme is Back to the Future, so that's really exciting. So the winter formal will be used to help get funding for BSU and also just keep the energy and spirit of our school alive during the winter. I also want to say congratulations to our FTC teams, the Team Cyber Machina, on their qualifier performance last Sunday. They won the Minnesota Gear Up Award for video submission, second place Inspire, and second place Design. And they also placed 4th overall and were in the finalist alliance. I also heard that they got 4 state bids, which is pretty incredible. Because I know a lot of them, I have a lot of classes with them, and I see how hard they work, and I'm really proud of them, and especially 4 state bids is pretty crazy. Last thing I wanted to say was the cast lists are out for the Theater Cruise 1 acts, and they're going to be rehearsing December through January, and they're going to be performing that last week of January into that early weekend of February.
And those are student directed, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. Any questions for the students? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The board's report, we did not have a workshop or work session this year, or this month. We will reconvene in January when we have more time on our schedule. That being said, Dr. Hinton and I are looking at a date to meet with our authorizer in discussions on moving forward with our expansion and moving forward as a school. So that is coming. Dr. Hinton.
Okay, so we have a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. We've completed the equity audit, so I thought that although it was not due till next month, that we would go ahead and get started on the work. Caitlin has a little bit of a slideshow, just to show, because there's a lot of graphs in it. So I just want to kind of highlight for the community, the work that we have done and the work that we still have coming.
The first one is present full.
Ari's gonna be in the way.
That's
all right.
all right. Ari's never in the way.
This document will be available on the website.
The equity audit is on the website,
Yep.
Which has all the graphs and the information in the slides. So the impetus for this equity audit is to take a look at how we are doing in terms of equity and to see where any areas for growth are and ways that we can further engage our community. We are driven to do this based on our mission and vision, and that should ground us in all of our work. Our mission is to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates well-rounded lifelong learners and global citizens. And then in our vision, we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Hinton, but Kari, the presentation is just the graphs from the attached document that you have.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And it's an 11-page document, so I'm just gonna kind of go through some of the highlights and the data. And if you have any questions, you can ask those at the end. One of the things at this school, we've had a demographic shift over the last 5 years. Our number of white students as a percentage of our population has gone down by 18%. The actual number of white students is roughly the same, but our growth has given us an opportunity to grow with other races as well. So we are currently a school that is roughly a third Black, white, and Asian with some other smaller demographics mixed in. So that's very exciting for us, which is, Woodbury has or South Washington County demographically is 78% white. So we have managed to become a destination school for diverse students. And from that, we can go ahead and take a look at a couple of other measures to see how we're doing. Oh, that's the demographic data, sorry. Caitlin, I jump around too fast.
It's okay.
Regular attendance is one of the ways that we look at whether or not a school is welcoming and students are comfortable here. The red is MSA's attendance 90% of the time or more, and the blue is statewide. Our EL students are 100%, 90% or more in person, and followed closely by our African American students who attend school 97.8% of the time, or 97.8% of our Black students attend school 90% of the time or more. So that's something that we're very proud of.
Dr. Hinton, with the attendance, is that those on campus? That's not including PSEO?
Correct.
Okay.
We don't collect attendance data for students
Yep.
off campus, yep. So that's a good thing. One of the areas that we noticed as an area for growth is in terms of parent involvement. We do not have data from conferences. We're collecting that this year because I think that that's also a very important measure. But we did take a look at our board election participation. And we know what parents voted, and so we based the demographic on the demographic of their child. So we know that that isn't always 100% match, but that was the closest we could get. And in a population of about roughly 31% of our students are white, 57% of our voters were white, and 11% of our voters were Black. This also, it's not shown in this data, but we have I think we need to get up our participation across the board. We only had 79 parents vote in the last election, which is, given we probably had about well over 1,000 eligible voters, we can do better in terms of getting people's voice in governance and also intentionally including our diverse families. Our next one is taking a look at enrollment in advanced courses. That would be advanced placement, and also included in there is our one CIS course that we offered last year. Demographically, we are pretty much spot on in terms of the enrollment at the school and the AP or CIS enrollment, which is shown in blue. So it's really hard to get any closer in terms of that, so that is a highlight for us. Also, the work that the board has done and the administration has done over the last few years in terms of allowing students to opt in to those advanced courses is paying off with a more diverse representation in those courses. In addition, in 2022, the board repealed policy 510.1, which disproportionately barred students from athletic and activity participation if they were struggling in a course. That has resulted in a much more representative participation in athletics. We don't really have good data on activities because a lot of those are kind of ad hoc and we don't take attendance in those. So we left out the activity data because it was too incomplete to be able to be useful. An area that we continue to need to work on is our behavior referrals. We are excited that in the school year ending 24, we only had 63 behavior referrals. So those are referrals where the teacher actually went and entered it into the student information system. Okay, that is an incredibly low number to have for a school of our size. However, our Black students were overrepresented in that number. And so at a time frame when we've been doing a lot of work on equity, I think we need to dive in a little bit more and try and examine that data a little bit more deeply and figure out what is going on there. I did not do a graph for the suspension data, but we only had 5 out-of-school suspensions last year. And those were disproportionately, Black students were disproportionately suspended as well. Again, that number is so small though that it's hard to get real, it's not a real, when you have data that small, it's hard to determine, trend. But it's also something we need to look at. The next area that we took a look at was our standardized test data. This is a statistic that I'm really excited about. That's our ACT composite scores. I'm not sure, I've never seen a school have this high and this close of demographic performance. Our Black students are within 1 point of our white students. I think that, and we haven't had the statewide data released, but I think if our Black students were their own school, they'd be in the top 10 in the state. So I don't know exactly where everyone's gonna shake out, but this is historically quite high data, so I would assume it's gonna come out really well. The next data that we have is the MCA data. First is the reading data. So we're looking at overall our students versus the state in the overall demographic areas. I think we've looked at this at in a previous meeting, but it's good to note that in reading, our Black students outperform white students at the state level. The only free and reduced is close to the white students at the state level, and I'm only going to the white students because at the state level, that's the highest performing demographic. Our SPED students outperform white students at the state level. So this is really positive data to look at, and we should be very proud of. Math is very similar. Our free and reduced students, which is a very small number in our building, are still performing below what we would, their peers, but that is one of the few areas that is not quite as good as the others. There's always still room for growth, but we're doing quite well comparatively. And then the next set of data that we looked at was comparing our achievement gap to between white and Black students to high-performing charter schools in the area and the state. So for reading, our achievement gap was 15.2 points between Black and white. Eagle Ridge, which is probably the charter school that's the most like us, they had a gap of 41.5. Nova was 26.9, and the state was 27.6. So I think we can feel very proud of our reading data. We have work to be done, but that gap is quite small. The gaps are slightly larger in math. Our data was that we had a 24-point gap, which is, it's more than it should be. It's less than Eagle Ridge, which was at 39.3, and Nova and the state. We were not able to, the other school that should be in this group is St. Croix Prep Upper School, but they do not have enough Black students to report publicly, so we can't compare with them. So that's the main data. We'll talk about the recommendations later, unless you'd like to talk about them now before we vote on them, or if you have any questions on this report at this time.
Okay, maybe you don't know, but why St. Croix Prep is also considered a school, charter school folks are going towards? Why would we have a different proportion of Blacks being so close? You know what I mean?
Well, I just don't, it depends on what the school is doing to try and encourage.
I
People to
I've
come.
heard that before.
And
Yeah, it is
It-
interesting.
It's a classical school. Classical schools tend to attract a different demographic. They learn, I don't know if they at St. Croix, but many of them, they teach them Latin. It's very, the learning style is not necessarily the same as, and necessarily as
The school's bigger
conducive.
than us, right? I mean, significantly bigger.
It's
Well,
close.
they're
I mean,
twice the
that,
size, aren't they?
they're bigger.
They're
They're
about twice the size, aren't they?
Yeah, about
So
1,200.
I'm really surprised that they didn't have enough to report data.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things
Yeah,
that, I mean, we
I-
could
it's a
dig
separate
into a lot
topic,
of,
but-
sometimes it's uniform, sometimes it's.
To your point, it'll be interesting to view this data 5 years down the road and see.
Mhm.
Mary?
Thanks. I'm figuring out how I want to phrase this. Regarding the behavior piece, and this is just a dig in, maybe a look at. So we've seen exponential growth, like in our 11th graders this year. When they were 9th graders, we brought in, that was the year we went from 86 to 120. And so there were a lot of kids that came in as 9th grader that hadn't been there, and I guess I would be curious to know if some of the issues, some of the behavior issues are coming from kids who have been here since 6th grade, or kids who are, this is their first or second or even third year here, and maybe haven't been here the full amount of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't have actually
And I'm not
broken
asking for
down.
an answer, I'm just
but-
saying that might be an area to dig in a little bit more.
So we've looked a little bit, I haven't pulled the full data. It doesn't seem to,
It doesn't follow that.
doesn't seem to follow that. I mean, you can find just, students tend to, not this past year, but the year before, I went through with all the, I think we had 9 suspensions that year, and every student had been there the year before who was suspended, so.
But at the end of the day, this report is based off student representation based on their ethnicity. So, big picture,
Right.
who's being represented in this? Not which grade level, not which student, it's what is their background? So we have to keep that in mind. And I think we'll can address it a little bit more in what the recommendations are
Yeah.
coming forward.
Yeah, but that's certainly something that we will be taking a look at. Does anybody?
Any more questions? Kari, do you have a question?
I actually had a comment. How many black students do we have? What is our number in that group?
So I'd have to drill back into it, but we are,
Approximate.
it's 29.4%, so
Okay.
just, I think it's about, don't quote me on this, but I think it's 212.
So all I was gonna say is that I think regardless of which subgroup the students fall into, to have 5 kids who've been suspended, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's a positive.
Yes,
That's if you've had 5, that's out of the number of kids you have at school. That's impressive.
yeah, it would be, even at some of the better behaving schools, 5 in a month would still be really low data. I mean, I come from a place I used to do 5 a day. So, right, it's been there. So it is impressive.
Any more questions or comments for Dr. Hinton?
Okay, so the next thing I just wanna, quick touch on is our, Give to the Max. We still have donations coming in. We are a little bit over $31,000 right now. Some of the, donations were targeted, some were general. This kind of shows where they came in. This year, the plan has been to use about 60% of the targeted donations towards upgrading some of the technology in Building B, which some of it is original to the building. So we're gonna work on upgrading some of those, and I think we can do 6 or 7 of the classrooms in Building B. Some classrooms might not use smart boards quite as much as others, so we'll focus on the classes that use them the most. 20% of the donations that were targeted will go to teacher mini grants, and so those mini grants will go out, I believe in January, and we will fund those, and they use that money for various projects and giving experiences to students in their classroom that they might not otherwise be able to. And then another 20%, or the other 20% of those donations will go to the food pantry. We have had an uptick in a number of students who receive educational benefits or qualify for free and reduced lunch. Those students do use the food pantry quite a bit, and so we've been happy that we've been able to provide meals for them, but it's popular. So it's nice to be able to fund that, so thank you so much to everyone who has donated. It's really great to see, and that's a large number for a school of our size.
Any questions on Get to the Max?
Okay, and then the other piece of this, and I didn't put a document in there because I'm still finding out all the information on the expansion update, it couldn't meet board deadline. Dan and I attended along with our, some parents and our project team, attended our neighborhood meeting in Woodbury last Thursday. There's some posters up, but I will just hold these up. They gave us these really nice posters, so I figured we might as well use them for something. We were very well received by the community. They were very happy with this project. This is Bailey Road. This is the main entry point for the school. Here's the sports field. There's some neighbors down here. This will be open, likely practice fields over here. There's some more neighbors over here. Most of the people that attended, I believe, did you get the sense that you're coming from over here?
There and on the south side as well.
Yeah, on the south side. We have our basin for stormwater. Really the only comments that are gonna still need to be addressed, and they are currently moving some of the trees from here down to here. This is a hill, so they're gonna put some trees on the hill because the neighbors down here didn't quite wanna see as much. Also making sure that the light and the noise doesn't infiltrate. The way, it's really exciting how they can do lights now, where it can get to be, like they had a little photometric graph, and there will be no light bleeding from our property onto the other property. The neighbors wanted to make sure that we weren't gonna light up our building like East Ridge does. They were not impressed by that amount of light on that school. That didn't violate code, so there's nothing that the city could do. But overall, it was very positive. Once we got through the our presentation was about an hour, and the questions were about an hour. It was a 2-hour meeting. Most of the time, I think, the rest of the time was spent talking to the city planners about other issues in their community, not necessarily having anything to do with us. But they did like the trail. This is a trail, so this was Mile Drive. This is a big sidewalk, and it connects to another trail system. So that will be nice for our students and a good benefit for our community and the overall neighborhood. So that's kind of how the neighborhood meeting went.
Okay, just a quick.
Yes,
Kind of just a
please.
quick comment. So I would say the neighbors were happy that we're not gonna have the through streets.
Yeah.
Because they had sign posted future expansion, so they're happy that we're gonna pull those
Yes.
signs out. And it's just gonna be the one cul-de-sac and the other one will be a dead end, so they're happy about that. And then the mile drive on the weekends for the soccer tournaments and everything is often used as like ad hoc parking. But also Bailey, if you see sometimes people park actually on Bailey. And so the nice thing the city said is, working together with us, we can provide actual professional and safe parking for the weekends. Cars can come in and use our space. So it's actually a nice solution, because we are getting rid of that mile drive will turn into a pedestrian walk. but we're gonna provide parking, parking for the weekends when we're not using it anyway, so it's actually, it's kind of a win-win for everyone.
Right, yeah, and I think, I have to imagine that people pulling out of here, it's not,
Not safe either.
no.
Or definitely not parking on Bailey, right? It's not designed for people. to
I
park
mean,
there, so.
There's really not any space. There is a parking lot for the soccer field, I don't think it's big enough.
No.
Or for whatever reason, people aren't using it. And then the other parking at East Ridge is quite a hike to come over there. So, overall, the city seems really happy moving it forward to our next step. Today, they put in the land use application was submitted with the adjustments that were requested. January 13th, we go to the Planning Commission. We are not expecting any problems with the Planning Commission. And the City Council meeting will be January 22nd. Both of those meetings are at 7 o'clock. The comp plan amendment, so we have to, because we're changing the comprehensive plan for the Metropolitan Council. That process is underway right now. That can take up to 60 days. They don't expect it to take that long. So, at this point, the closing for the land is slated for March 25th. The closing, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the purchase agreement, it has to be done by April 1st or our agreement expires. So it doesn't mean that we couldn't rework it, but it's likely gonna cost us a lot of money if we don't get it done by then. And construction will begin 2 weeks after we have possession of the property. So it's really exciting to be moving to the next step. So, I expect that we'll have more, news next month as we're getting our, some more of the drawings and some more of the plans done.
Any questions or comments?
Just one more.
Yes.
Does it make sense to talk through the bricks at all, or is that too detailed for?
One of the things that, and I think we might as well just mention it, so one of the things that the city has been talking a lot about is we had submitted in our plan, the walls are gonna be made of concrete forms. And so they were gonna put a brick form in there and apply field applied stain. The city is touchy about that. I mean, I think that we could get that through the planning commission, but our contractor, Rashawn, and our architects, and they've priced out doing what's called thin brick, where they've applied, the form has the thin brick in it, so it looks like real brick, and it's laid in that
It
pattern.
actually
It's-
is real
it
brick.
is
it's
real
just
brick. It's-
a piece of it. It's not
Yeah.
a full brick.
Yeah.
It's like an inch thick
It's
or
like a
half inch
veneer,
thick.
brick veneer, yeah.
Yeah, that's good, thank you, Dan. So that could potentially add 100,000 to the budget, which given that we're talking about a $55 million project, it's really not that significant and could save us money in the long haul because the stained brick will need to get, it's not painted, but it's this process similar to that, and it will fade. Ours, right now, we're looking at red brick or reddish brick, which can start to turn pink. I mean, I'm not sure that we want to necessarily have a pink building. I mean, we would have to restain it, which would, I jumped up on Bruce today. I didn't jump up. I asked him, well, how much does that cost? Well, you know, he had to pull that out of, it's like at least $50,000 without prep. For the, to state, well, you gotta think about how big the building is. It's a big building. We don't have a lot of brick on it.
And how often?
Well, it depends. I mean, it could be every 10 years, it could be more often.
So 50,000 every 10 years.
Yeah, it seems like makes sense with the nice material.
Yeah, and it will look really nice. So,
I just bring it up because that came up today.
yeah,
actually.
today they just kinda,
They're looking for some guidance from us, so maybe it makes sense.
yeah,
It seems like the numbers made sense to move forward with a nicer material.
yeah,
Mhm.
so.
Do you think long-term?
And then long-term, it'll pay for itself in
Right.
15 years.
And I think overall it'll make a more attractive building. I don't think that the other was gonna be unattractive.
Just takes maintenance.
Yes. I mean, we won't have to do anything to it then. It's like any other brick building. Maybe it has to be cleaned, maybe. But, so, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Dan.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything else?
No, I think those.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a written report because it's all coming so fast, so. Yep, and we've been working with the bonding people, trying to work through some things that we have to get ready to go, but, you know, I've got a list over winter break of documents to prepare for them, so it should be good.
Any further questions or comments?
Just thank you to both of you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys putting all your time and effort into that. So,
It's come a long ways.
yeah. Yes. Thank you.
All right, Isaac with the Finance Committee report.
Okay, we did not have a December meeting, so the plan is to look at the November financials and December financials in the January meeting and then approve both months at once. So we did file the reports as needed what's needed, and they're pretty similar to the previous reports, so we'll look at them later on.
Abdo?
And so, then I'd like to introduce Abdo for a presentation.
Is there somewhere I should sit? Probably better.
Probably up here so Kari can see you in the camera.
Is it gonna be up on here too then?
Yep, we have
You are the
that presentation that you gave us.
For Kari to see him, he's probably gonna have to, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Wait till it gets pulled up. But my name's Robbie Smith. I'm an audit associate with Abdo. Was on the audit this year for Math and Science Academy. So I'm here today to present the 2024 financial statement audit. So first, just kind of an introduction of what we'll go over quick. First, we'll do the audit results and then the general fund results, as well as some other governmental funds and our key performance indicators. So it's our responsibility as auditors to issue an opinion on the financial statements. And so the opinion that we'll be issuing is an unmodified opinion, which means it was a clean audit. The unmodified opinion is kind of the best one you can get. It's kind of what you should strive for your audit to be. We also perform testing around Minnesota legal compliance, make sure that the school is in compliance with applicable state statutes. And during that testing, we didn't find any instances of non-compliance. So the audit results are good. So this first chart here is average daily membership, also referred to as ADM. We like to show this one at the beginning of our presentation because a lot of our upcoming charts will be kind of based off of the ADM. So we can see here that ADM has increased over the last 5 years, finishing FY24 at about 599.3. So this chart here is the general fund balances chart that we have. So the top line in orange is going to be the general fund expenditures for the year. And then the yellow line all the way across the middle is going to be the general fund balance as a percentage of those general fund expenditures. And then the bottom line that says 25% all the way down is your fund balance policy. So your fund balance policy states that the school should maintain 25% of its general fund expenditures in its unreserved fund balance. So we can see here you guys finished this year at just under 33% in that category. So you're above your fund balance policy, which is good. We can also see that even with the general fund expenditures increasing a little over $1 million, you're still able to maintain a high level of your fund balance.
Can you take questions?
Sure.
I mean, because you're right, the numbers, but then when you look at the percentage, it's come down a fair bit, right? From
Yeah.
40 to 33.
So fund balance did increase this year, which I'll show on the next slide, but relative to the increase in expenditures, it didn't increase as much. So that's why the percentage decreased a little bit. So then this next slide here is the general fund budget actual statement. Obviously you have the original budget amount and the amendments, and then the final budget amount, as well as the actuals and then the variance. For the general fund, there were positive variances in both the revenues and expenditures for the year, which means that revenues were higher than budgeted and expenditures were lower than budgeted. Both of them were at a variance of just over $90,000, which is actually fairly in line with the budget. That's really only a variance of about 1.2, 1.3%. And then so, however, there is a excess of expenditures over revenues this year in the general fund, but with the insurance recovery proceeds that were received for the insurance claims for the hail and roof damage this year, that actually was able to cause a positive change in the net fund balance. So fund balance for the general fund did increase this year, about $200,000 to 2.5 million. So this chart here is the general fund revenues per ADM chart. I have to explain a few things on this one. So what this one shows here, it compares the 2024 and 2023 data for Math and Science Academy, and it also compares it to two peer groups. Those two peer groups being Region 11, which is similar charter schools in this region of the state, and then it also compares it to the statewide average. And the statewide average also is for charter schools only. It does not include districts or private schools or anything like that. It's also, one thing to note is that we're comparing it to 2023 data, as we don't have the full 2024 data available yet from the state, so we kind of have to use last year's. And so there's three categories that we're comparing here, which is state sources, federal sources, and local sources. The local sources consist of donations and tuition and interest. And then anything else that really isn't federal or state money. We can see over the last 2 years then, I guess, Math and Science Academy has been lower than both the region and statewide average. The state and federal data, I would say, does get a little bit skewed because there are a lot of charter schools that receive a lot of compensatory revenue from the state and from the federal government, as well as increased special education revenue, which MSA doesn't really receive as much as a lot of other schools in those two categories. So that's why it's a little bit lower than the averages there.
I guess I do have a question on
Yep.
this one. General fund revenues. So you mentioned donations as a local source.
Mhm.
That number seems really low compared to what we just talked about with get to the max.
That's
Am I-
gonna be, so yeah, that's per ADM. So
ADM.
it's per that 600 students basically.
Okay.
So it kind of gets brought down lower.
Yeah.
But it did increase from last year.
And we did, because interest rates went up, we got a lot more
Mhm.
interest income.
Yep, so we did see that as well, so which is always nice to see. Then the next chart here is our general fund expenditures per ADM. I'll kind of explain this chart a little bit too, because we have a few that look just like this one. So the bottom line in orange is Math and Science Academy, and then the yellow line towards the top is the statewide average, and then the boxes are the 25th to 50th and 51st to 75th percentile in the state. One thing to note with this one as well, the 2024 amount of $22,360 for the statewide average is just a projection that we have, kind of compares the data from the last 2 years and kind of spits something out for us, because obviously, like I said before, we don't have that information yet. But so we can see from this chart, MSA's general fund expenses or expenditures per ADM did increase just over $2,000 this year, bringing the school to around the 25th percentile in the state, but still well below the statewide average. Then this next chart is pretty basic and not a lot to go over with this one. It's just the general fund operating expenditures by object code. So it has to do with the way that all the expenditures are coded. And this is only including the salaries and wages, employee benefits, purchase services, and supplies. We can see kind of how we noted with the earlier chart that expenditures in total are increasing, but if we're looking at the numbers there, those percentages and allocations have remained pretty much the same over the last few years. This next chart here shows some information relating to the building company. The building company fund balance did decrease about $75,000 to a balance of $624,535. Then looking at the graph, the line on the top is the lease aid revenue expected to receive for the building company, and then the chart or the bars down below are just the principal and interest amounts that are currently owed on the outstanding bonds for the next 10 years. So here we'll start a couple of our key performance indicators. So this chart here is the general fund balances as a percentage of expenditures. So similar to the chart we looked at earlier, However, this one also compares MSA to the Region 11 average and the statewide average. So this chart, this graph here, you can see how the fund balance percentage as a percentage of expenditures did decrease a little bit, but it's still well above, maybe not well above, but it's still above the statewide and region average. This next chart here is the elementary and secondary regular instruction per ADM chart. This did increase this year from $4,700 up to $6,420, which is still below the our projected state average, but that is a fairly significant increase, bringing you guys to around the 65th or 70th percentile. That increase is primarily going to be related to the increase in ADM this year, as well as one of the main things being that new PSEO contract with Century College. This last chart here is the special education expenditures per ADM. As we can see across the bottom, this has remained relatively the same over the last few years for MSA. Spending is about $1,300 per ADM, which is well below the state average, right around the 10th percentile. That's all we have for our presentation. This was our audit team. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. Otherwise, Justin Reeves at Creative Planning is also a really good resource.
Open it up for discussion or conversation, questions? So I guess looking at this, just asking the devil's advocate question, are there any concerns or things that we as a board should be aware of?
I would say that we don't have any concerns with the school at all. The fund balance is healthy. It's above your policy, and it's not getting too low, which is good. I suppose that could maybe change once all those expenditures come in for the new building, but I would say for right now, nothing is anticipated to get worse or anything like that. So, because it's not bad right now at all. So this is one of our healthier schools, I would say, that we work with. So.
Have you worked with other schools who have gone through the expansion process, and are there things that we should be aware of?
Just keep an eye on the fund balance. It's kind of going to be your main thing. When that fund balance gets too low, you don't want to make sure you're not getting close to SOD, which is not good for charter schools, and there's been some schools in the news recently about that. So just kind of keep an eye on that, I suppose.
Kari, do you have any questions?
No, sounded good.
All right. Then we will move on. Thank you very much.
All
for your
right,
time.
thank you.
It was a great pleasure.
Thank
working
you.
with you guys too.
We'll move on to action items. First up was our postponement vote on the Puerto Rico trip. Effie Shapolsky is here tonight to answer some questions and give a quick overview of the trip.
Hello. Sorry I couldn't be here last time. I was not aware that I should come. But then, now I know, and now I'm here. So I can answer any questions that we have. Thank you.
Because last meeting we had an overview of what the trip was. But
Yes.
we went through, there was some concerns or questions on equity. What made those questions be?
So I guess I'll start and ask. I know when the Spain trip came up, equity was a question that was asked. And just wondering what are the plans for fundraising to help students whose families maybe don't have and I can't remember, is it $4,800 for
For
Puerto Rico?
this-
It's not as much as,
Nope, it's cheaper. It is. I'm trying to look. It's in this. Where'd it go? 3,420. So 3,420
okay,
this year.
so the $3,400.
Yes.
What kinds of plans are there to help students raise those funds? I know that letters were encouraged to be sent out, but you're still going to family members then and asking them to help fund a student's trip, and if a family doesn't have funds, they don't have funds. So I guess that's one of my biggest concerns is how are we working to make this equitable so that families who don't have the 3,400, that their child might still be able to fundraise and work to be able to go.
So there are scholarships, several different scholarships through the private company. I mean, it is a private company that we go through, so it's not like we can use any like state funding with like free and reduced lunch. There's not something that's applicable to that. But there are scholarships where students, I was looking at one earlier where it was a 250-word essay that they could submit to EF, and they had a rubric and they had all the different things that you talk about it. A lot of it was write to us about what this experience is going to mean for you. And I think a lot of our students could do that if they would like to. And especially since we are a school that requires them to learn Spanish, and these are going to Spanish-speaking countries, I think the students can make a really good argument for this is going to help me in my Spanish journey as I'm going forward in my Spanish because I've studied it for so long. So I think that's one way that we can do that. We did try to do the fundraisers for the Spain trip. I tried to reach out to families that might have been interested, and the only thing that I was getting back was the food fundraisers, and so we did, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and we didn't have too much turnout to make really a big impact on that amount of money. I mean, it's a huge amount of money to try to raise, and our school, we already have so many of those food fundraisers, so you kind of, I don't know, inflating the system. There's a lot of fundraisers for people to go to. So we ended up having, I think it was around, I ended up asking students last time asking families if they would like to receive money from those fundraisers that we did. And if they didn't, then they could opt out and say, no, my family doesn't necessarily need this, because since it was for the whole group and it wasn't like this student is bagging groceries for this amount of hours so they get this amount of money. It was just this general fund that we had. I proposed it to the whole group like that, and then 10 families had responded, and so we divided that money between those 10 families that responded, and it ended up being about, I think, $94 each, which really paid for the tip for them. So it is an issue when you think about fundraising, and I myself, it is a lot of work to put on one teacher to try to raise that much money for that many students. So I think if families want to have these opportunities, I think if there are parent volunteers or people that want to step up and do that volunteering to raise that money, I would be more than happy to work with them and figure that out. But it's just a lot on somebody who, it's just me, so it's kind of hard. Yeah, and then a lot of our students are of working age as well. If they would like to have a summer job, if they would like to have, even just a summer job for one summer, or if they work, a lot of our students will work part-time. So I think it's a pretty attainable goal, especially now if we set the precedent that there's going to be a Spanish trip every other year. I think students and families can know from 6th grade and go, oh, my student is studying Spanish, starting in 6th grade. And they can know that, oh, we should start saving up, or we should start getting a plan in place where they can save their money over that time, or the students can get a job and save that money over time. So I think there's opportunities there, and it is a weird thing because it's not necessarily going to be equitable in the sense that everyone can go, because not everyone's going to go. I myself did not go on a plane until I was 19 years old, and so I know that it is a privilege, and I know it's something that's exciting, but I think the idea that not everyone's going to go shouldn't stop us from allowing for that opportunity for our students to go if they have that drive to want to do that. Not saying that students that don't have the money don't have the drive, but just, I think there are ways we can work around it, but I'm not getting a lot of that back to me in ways that I can materially help, if that makes sense.
It looks like I just went onto the site for this group, and it looks like they've actually got 3 different ways that they're willing to work with people to also get the money set up between personal donations, scholarships, and an automatic payment plan. So
Yep.
I think if we could find ways to maybe leverage that with people.
Yeah.
That could be helpful as well.
Yeah. And if maybe that's just more awareness of maybe I need to do a better job of pushing that out there, that there are scholarships and there are things like that through the EF company. I think it is just harder when that is another thing to have to add to your day. So I get that can be just another thing to add to your plate. So that can be difficult for families.
Is the plan from the Spanish department to try to do a trip every other year?
We were trying to think of doing an international trip to a Spanish-speaking country every other year, and then balancing that out with a trip to the Concordia language villages. And so we are having a trip to the Concordia language villages I think it's in Moorhead? I don't know. But it's like almost like a long weekend immersion trip. And so they go to this place, they all pretend that they're in a certain country, and then they can only talk in Spanish. They can only read in Spanish. If they want to bring a book, it's only in Spanish. And so we were trying to offer that as a lower cost way to get that immersion experience and get that language experience. And that's this year in March or April, I can't remember. Meg Flowers is the one that's really heading that. And we have some students signed up, but I don't think a ton. We had definitely had a lot more interest for the international trip than we did for the trip to go to Moorhead, Minnesota, but still cool opportunities. And I think it's nice to have that variety of something that's lower cost and in the cities as well, because we don't necessarily have the data of why students and why families didn't go on the Spain trip, right? I don't know if it was because of money. I don't know if it was because they don't feel comfortable sending their student internationally without them, right? So there's a lot of factors that we don't know and we can just guess at, but we can't necessarily make those conclusions unless I were to send out like a poll and we had good data about it.
Any other questions? Mary, it looked like you were going to say something.
Just a quick one then.
Yeah.
Do we have any feedback on like how well the Spanish trip was received, or is that incorporated into future trips? Like from students or from parents? Or,
I mean, I had a survey that I had to send to EF about our experiences, and so I had students coming to me and staff and chaperones kind of coming to me to add to that. So I know kind of what went well in that case, and obviously we know things are better from one trip to the next. Like we've learned things and learned how to streamline things and make things easier. So not in necessarily a formal way, we haven't had that, but there's a lot cooking.
yeah, it's be interesting that we don't lose that, right? Because like you mentioned, we have so much information. I see it all the time when people leave the companies, right? You're just, no, right? You're losing all that knowledge.
Yeah, it's good to know that. Yeah.
So when the students leave, it'd be nice to somehow
Yeah.
capture that as like an exit to from the
Yeah.
trip, so we can take that into the next one.
Yeah, that'd be nice to have a formal
Maybe more.
survey
formal,
after.
yeah. I think it would be nice to share that data even to the board. It's not a
Mhm.
requirement, but just come back and say, here's the folks, here's how they rated it.
Mhm.
You always get your hotel ratings and all these sorts of things, but it'd be nice to come back and say, this changed my life, and here's the,
Mhm.
I think that would help also sell it to the sixlets or whatever, sixth
Yeah.
graders coming up and saying, this is an important thing we need to plan for in 10th,
Yes.
11th grade.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and to that extent, Dan, I think that would be wonderful. I mean, it would be great to hear from some of the kids that went on that spring trip. To find out what their experiences were like, to find out high points and low points, and those things. Rather than getting a call and saying, "Hey, I'm having something shipped and it's a 3-foot sword." But those kinds of things. Is, to hear from a board that this is the impact that it made on this student or on these students, and that would, I think that would also help us as a board too, because we'd see the value from the student's perspective.
You're welcome to speak at open forum. All right, So is there a motion to approve the Puerto Rico trip?
I move to approve the Puerto Rico trip.
Is there a second?
I second.
Roll call. Wendell Sletton? Aye. Oh, sorry, discussion, thank you. Opening up for discussion. I think you made some very valid points about fundraising and commitment to a trip like this. It does take time, it does take effort. I think also, to Mary's point, having trips planned further in advance allows for families to prepare. So as we look to the future, that might be the best way to encourage people to participate. Any other discussion?
I was gonna say, I think to that too, having that feedback that Dan bring forward and so forth, helps sell it to parents, like you said, who are watching and going, oh, this is what the Spanish trip got. You know, these are what the kids got.
Testimonials.
Yeah, exactly. You know, not you have testimonials that are from some kid who knows where, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and I think the other piece is it also allows parents to then say, oh, hey, your kid went on this trip, can you tell me how that was?
All right. Ready to a vote? Roll call. Wendell Sletton, aye. Isaac Leonardi.
Aye.
Sarah Harms. Tamara Brooks.
Aye.
Jules Kinkle.
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer.
Aye.
Kari Kerner.
Aye.
Dan Ellingson.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimously. Thank you, Effie, for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Next up is the purchase agreement to the property. Dr. Hinton, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just, this, change in the purchase agreement, because we have not had it fully executed up until now. It has been signed, it hasn't been executed yet, pending board approval. Because of the delay, which is, what I understand is not uncommon for, the owner to go back and try to renegotiate the deal a little bit. The things that, and Koo is very shrewd in terms of keeping the costs down for us. The changes from the agreement that we looked at this fall include, we're gonna pay the Green Acres tax. The Green Acres tax is the, it's a change in the amount of tax dollars that the farmer paid because it was farmland to the new use. So that's about $25,000. Initially, Tom Kindler wanted us to pay that. We negotiated out of it. Now he wants it back. The other thing is $750 a day that he is charging us. Either, you could look at it two different ways. It could be lost interest or to keep the property off the market. That begins November 1st and can carry through till closing, which needs to be by April 1. That's the third condition that is changed in this agreement. And as an overall amount of money within the project, it's small as a percentage. It's also, if we think about the cost it would be to move to a different property, is astronomical at this point. So it, you know, there's a part of me that doesn't like the idea that we're gonna be paying, pay more. I can feel like, no, I don't want to, but it is, I think, the best decision at this point to keep the project moving forward. And once we have this executed, unless we have to, don't close by April 1st, it's a set deal. You can't keep changing the terms. If we pause and don't do that, we're gonna have trouble with the land use agreement, and we're also going to potentially end up paying even more.
Dan, was there anything else?
No, I think that's right. I think you just have to look at it as like, what's the cost of our alternatives?
Mhm.
I think. Right now it's a great site, and we've done a lot of work on it, and so it's painful, but it's the right answer.
Is there a motion to approve the purchase agreement for the property?
I can move.
Motion by
So-
Dan. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion?
Do we know if there's a way that we can take some of these funds that we're paying to roll into, whether it be the Green Acres tax or anything like that? Do we approach that, or are we just
Which
with like the daily balance toward closing,
So we're not writing a check right now, it
Right,
just changes the overall.
all costs and stuff? So it's not a major impact, just like you said, kind of minor overall.
It's gonna be tens of thousands. It will
Yeah,
be-
it will
But-
be.
but- But it's, I mean, on the scale of
It's not
things,
millions.
right.
And it comes from the bond proceeds, so it's not coming out of our general fund. Doesn't mean it's not real money that
Right,
we
right.
really have to pay, but it's not money that's coming
Right.
from textbooks.
Yeah, and I mean, once we sign, then he can't, I'm just worried the way that he's getting.
So-
But I also agree, it's almost like when you go to a restaurant and say, well, the wait's half hour, I'm going to another restaurant, it's gonna be 45 minutes now, so.
Yeah, the only thing that's beyond our control, Kate, is, I mean, there's a lot of other pieces that are still moving, and so I think the project team is doing a great job trying to keep it to schedule, but you saw the traffic study delay us a few months, right? And that was never on the schedule either, so that's the risk, but I think right now, given what we know, we believe it's still doable, and keep that schedule, so I think it makes sense, but
Okay.
in a few months, we may come back with something that we didn't foresee either, because of the project. But anyway, so what we know right now, it makes the most sense for us.
Okay.
That was my exact question was, okay, do you foresee anything
So we
holding
have,
us up so we can't close on March 25th?
I mean, there's things that we didn't foresee that the traffic study would take this long. However, the things that we are dealing with right now, we have a little bit more control over.
Okay,
Doesn't mean we have control of everything, but it's, I think we should be, in pretty decent shape. I've talked with our bonding team, and Koo is really keeping them,
And this is a recommendation from Koo.
Okay.
yeah, no, this is, who negotiated this for us, and,
Okay.
he's done a phenomenal job at keeping this moving along, so.
Any further discussion? Okay. Just remind me who moved, Ellingson moved, Kinkle second, okay. Oh, Isaac.
Aye. Oh, do you want to go to?
I'm gonna change the order. Isaac? Sarah?
Aye.
Samara?
Aye.
Jules?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Ari?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mary?
aye.
Wendell? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the financial audits. Isaac, would you like to motion to approve the financial audit?
Yep, I move to approve the financial audit.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion?
The way I understand it is we have the audit and it is what it is, and we submitted what we needed already to our authorizer and MDE. And then just as a board, we,
This is just
almost a
part of the
formality
process.
or the process.
And as you see future board items, we're doing finance trading with creative planning coming up in February. Or the
January.
January, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Sarah Harms. Tamara Brooks.
Aye.
Jules Kinkle.
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer.
Aye.
Kari Kerner.
Aye.
Dan Ellingson.
Aye.
Mary Yap.
Aye.
Wendell Sletton. Aye. Isaac Leonardi.
Aye.
Motion passes. Equity audit recommendations. Dr. Hinton.
So, these recommendations, the action items are the recommendations from the, equity audit report. High level, I'll just kind of quickly go through them for the audience, I'm not gonna go through each component of them. But were 4 areas that I think are important. These are not the only things that we will do for equity work. This is just the things that stand out the most from this equity audit. We would continue the equity work that we've been working on as a staff, which included training on culturally responsive educational practices, grading for equity, and staff understanding their own personal equity journey. A deeper dive into the discipline data and kind of understanding what that data at a granular level actually looks like, and examining why there are changes and gaps. So that is the next area for study. We will likely have a report on that by spring, and then that will also help shape our work moving forward. Our welcoming parents of color is essential for their students' success. Our students of color do quite well. However, there is still room for growth. We've had the implementation of the Black Student Union, which has grown. This year we have added an Asian Student Union. Those tend to bring in more parents of color to those groups. However, there's more strategies that we need. So, and some of these are actually already in our authorizer contract to have 2 culturally specific events to encourage parents' involvement. So we will have a Black Student Union Night in February, where we will be bringing in families.
History, heritage, and love night.
Yep. So Ms. Brooks leads our Black Student Union, so she's setting that up. And then we're gonna be more intentional about engagement opportunities at our multicultural night, which is well attended. We have a large number of diverse families that attend. However, we haven't really leveraged that into involvement other than attendance. The other thing that I think is one of the other things that I think is very important is trying to engage more people in general and more diverse people as well in our board elections. Last spring, we talked about doing a candidate forum. I think that we should implement that and have a streamed event here on campus where we can invite in families and have assistance, because I think one of the barriers is not all of the adults in the family or any of the adults in the family can log in, know their usernames and passwords, which you need to know in order to vote. So if we can get families in, get them to hear who our candidates are, and give them assistance in figuring out how to vote, I think that would be really helpful in terms of upping that, and having more people, diverse people, have their voice in governance, even at that level, I think is important. We're also this year tracking school conference attendance and reaching out to parents who have not had a conference, and trying to be a little bit more flexible in how they can conference. I mean, it might just be a conversation that's not at conference time, but we're having a discussion on how their child is doing and how they can assist their child in doing better. So we will continue to work on that under the welcoming more parents. Also, we're going to continue our training and support on the multi-tiered system of supports, which allows us to target students who are struggling and do early interventions, both in the content area and at the grade level, which we've been able to do since at a more intense level since we moved into our block schedule. And then the fourth one, I think you always have to do, which is progress monitoring, which is essential for continued growth. I would recommend an annual review of the equity data and implementation of strategies to mitigate gaps as they come along. Because we may find we're filling some gaps here and then other ones are opening up. So I think we need to continue to monitor that. It's work that I don't think will ever be done entirely. So that is the other recommendation.
Is there a motion to approve the equity audit recommendations?
A motion to approve the equity.
And I will second. Open for discussion? Okay.
Oh, no, I had one. Just, I've been on the board long enough, I remember paper ballots, so, and I'm not saying we go back to those, but I'd be interested if you could just take a look and see how were those 79 out of 1,000 parents, that's not great. And I think nobody's excited about that, but, and I'm not saying we go back to paper, but is there some other way? Cause I think we have a nice system right now, but it does require login, so I don't wanna jump to solutions, but maybe there's something there that we're missing. We need to talk to some of those parents that didn't vote, and why didn't they vote? Is it because they don't care, or is it because they were, fill in the blank? Before we figure out, cause I mean, I'd feel better if we had 500 out of 1,000. I mean, then I would
Right.
say we had 50%
Yes.
participation, and we have a sound board, but if we had, this is not a lot of people.
No, I mean, there's 139 voters, 60 of them were staff, and 79 were not staff. So and maybe part of that is to putting that in, beefing up our work in the election committee.
Yeah,
As we
something
work on
maybe
that,
the election committee needs look
to
at
try
that.
and take a look at that. And I think the election committee will be formed next month. I think January is typically when we do it.
When I think about a lot of the data, the action items that came from the data, I think about correlations for participation from our families, participation from our students, the behavior data that was looked at. I think there's a direct correlation with all of this information and that we should be looking at that. And so I hesitate for us to go, well, what kids are new? Like I heard you say that, Mary, and I think that we have to also look at the behaviors of a system. And so when I think about, because this is long, hard fought for me as a Black woman, because that's how I show up, so I'm just gonna call it and name it. This is across our country. This is an issue, and we need to figure it out because there are gaps that exist and are prevalent. We're closing those gaps here, but we're not perfect, but nobody is across our nation. And so therefore, we need to look at what is it, correlation, what is it that we are doing as a community that makes people feel marginalized? And that's the bottom line, because there is some marginalization that happens.
No, a very valid point. And something I was thinking about too is we have a number, it's a small number, but we have a significant number of families who are first generation immigrants.
Yes.
And I question, do they understand that they are eligible to vote even though they
Right.
may not be a registered voter of the US? And so it's getting that knowledge out there and getting that education of, hey, you're a parent of MSA, you are eligible to vote in this election. So I
Well-
want to piggyback on that.
And to that point too, their child goes to a charter school, they may have voted last
November.
in
Mhm.
the school district voting,
Yep.
not realizing that, well, wait a minute, we have a separate one. And that's very confusing because, we're a public school, but yet we're not part of that system. And so I can see where that could be extremely confusing.
Am I allowed to say something? I feel like other first generation citizens, I feel like we can all relate to having to help our parents fill out like government work or just translating things where the wording can get really confusing. So especially with stuff like this, parents just might not straight up understand how to vote or like how the websites work, and they might think it too complicated, or just they try, but it gets to a point where they like, is it worth it to spend this much time trying to figure out how to vote for one person, and especially children these days. I say this as a kid myself. I mean, everyone's really busy, and also parents don't want to go asking their kids like government stuff. That's different because it has to get done, but they don't. I see how they could think it might not be worth it at that point. I just thought we might want to think about that.
And I love this, Jen. I want to piggyback on you to say correlation. Again, it's correlation. Is this relevant, or am I depending on the expertise of the people who I entrust my child with? Is this even relative to what I need to do for participating to make sure my child gets educated and gets the top tier education that I expect. I do my job at home, cause that's, you know, I'm gonna be honest, as a Black mother, I'm constantly saying, don't make that school call me. And that's not, like, of course they can call me, but don't make that school call me is to say, don't cause problems, keep your head down, do what you're told, and come to school and learn. And so I think we have to, again, invite people in and make the opportunity more straightforward, more understandable. To Dan's point, what do we need to do to make this a less taxing endeavor?
And I think the beauty of this audit is what we just found. And I think Abigail made a great point, and something to contribute to this audit is our website compatible to multi-languages? And I know we talked about it before, but we're now really in the depths of it. So is that something we can add to this moving forward? As part of, I think it would be number 4. It would just be under that umbrella of progress monitoring.
And you know, this is just a,
It's the
this is
start.
our first one.
It's the start.
Right, so this is the start. We have an enormous amount of data. I love my data, but I tried to spare you all 57 pages of data, so that we could read it and get through it in one evening. But like anything in education, as you dig down through one issue, you find another. And we're always gonna be peeling back those layers of the onion and trying to find. I'm really excited to be at a place where it's important to us to make that effort and to make that progress. And I feel like if we are able to reach out and ask people, because that's often something as part of the dominant culture, we forget, we decide, we know why, and then we just act, which is counterintuitive to what we're actually trying to do, which is get more people's voice in the room. So I think moving forward, continuing to work on that can only help.
Any further discussion? Isaac, Sarah, Kari? All right. Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote. Tamara Brooks,
Aye.
Jules Kinkle,
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer,
Aye.
Kari Kerner,
Aye.
Dan Ellingson,
Aye.
Mary Yap,
Aye.
Wendell Sutton, aye, Isaac Leonardi,
Aye.
and Sarah Harms. Passes unanimously. Alright, the creation of the survey committee. So at the end of, or at the start of every year, January, we develop a survey committee to review the questions that we ask our community, and to collect data. So, speaking of data, Dr. Hinton.
So, typically we've had 3 board members on the survey committee, along with myself. We would like to get this survey out later in January into early February. So in terms of, basically we're looking for volunteers to join the survey committee. We typically have met virtually. We use a lot of the same questions year to year so that we can start to see a pattern, but there are always questions that we think are important to get additional data on, and so we develop those. So we're looking for board members who are interested in participating in that committee.
Are there any volunteers?
I can go up here.
Okay, for this one.
Brian, Jules, one more?
She said she's gonna buy pizza.
Sarah would like to
Actually, I'll eat
be,
it.
Thank you for taking that for
Sarah will be as a teacher member.
Thank you.
So we're looking for maybe 2 meetings, and then bring the survey forward in January for approval from the board, and then out to the community. following. Okay.
And I will probably reach out after break unless anybody's really bored.
Next part of our meeting is a closed session. This meeting will be closed as permitted by section 13D05, subdivision 3A, to evaluate the performance of Math and Science Academy's executive director. Please exit the room.
The lottery,
Yeah, so the lottery is, we're accepting, applications right now, so we'll
but we have
set
to
that.
determine a number
Yeah,
at the
so-
January and
Yeah.
then the lottery date that the lottery's gonna happen, right?
I think the lottery, it's always February 15th, I think it's gonna be the 14th because 15th is a Saturday.
Right.
So, but I think the number in that, we need to determine.
So
And
the
then
lottery.
election
and then-
committee also needs to be
Yeah, we got that.
established. Sorry.
Yeah, should be established in January.
Yeah. And I'll go through my notes, cause I remember us having some to-dos for this year.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I
Yeah.
move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Dan Ellingson.
Yes.
Mariette.
Yes.
Wendell Sutton, aye. Isaac Leonardi.
Aye.
Sarah Harms.
Aye.
Tamara Brooks.
Aye.
Jules Kinkle.
Aye.
Brian Linsmeyer.
Aye.
Kari Turner.
Thank you guys for
Is that aye?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8:23.